It was a crisp autumn morning, and the lecture hall was packed with students eager, or, in some cases, anxious, for their philosophy class. The renowned Dr. Raymond Carter, a tenured professor with decades of experience, strode confidently to the podium. His sharp suit and piercing gaze commanded respect, but he was most known for his staunch atheism and his tendency to challenge students on matters of faith. Today, he had something special planned. He smirked as he flipped open his notes. "Good morning, class," he said, his voice echoing through the large hall. "Today, we discuss one of the greatest illusions mankind has ever believed in, God." A murmur rippled through the room. Some students leaned forward in interest, while others looked uncomfortable. They had heard of Dr. Carter's famous God debate, where he would systematically dismantle religious beliefs, often humiliating students who dared to challenge him. Now, Dr. Carter continued, pacing across the stage, "I know some of you believe in a higher power. But today, I want to give you a chance. If anyone in this room can provide undeniable, irrefutable evidence that God exists, I'll concede right here and now." Silence. Dr. Carter smirked. It was always the same. The students would sit quietly, avoiding eye contact, unsure of how to respond. Then, a chair scraped against the floor. A single student stood up. Barron Trump. Dressed in a crisp white shirt and navy blazer, he stood tall and composed, his blue eyes steady as they met Dr. Carter's gaze. A whisper ran through the class. Some students recognized him immediately, while others simply knew him as the intelligent and reserved student who rarely spoke in debates. Dr. Carter raised an eyebrow. "Ah, Barron Trump. The son of a former president. This should be interesting." Barron smiled politely. "Professor, you asked for undeniable proof of God's existence. But before I answer, may I ask you a few questions?" Dr. Carter chuckled. "Oh, turning the tables on me, are we? Fine. Ask away." Barron took a step forward. "Professor, would you say you have complete knowledge of the universe?" Dr. Carter smirked. "No human has complete knowledge. Science is about discovery." "Exactly," Barron nodded. "Then isn't it possible that God exists in the parts of the universe we have yet to understand?" Dr. Carter's smile faltered slightly, but he quickly recovered. "That's a convenient argument. God of the gaps, they call it. Just because we don't know something doesn't mean we should default to a divine explanation." Barron didn't miss a beat. "Fair enough. But let's talk about something else, morality. Would you agree that some actions, like murder and theft, are inherently wrong?" "Of course," Dr. Carter said, waving his hand dismissively. "Morality is a product of evolution and social agreements." Barron tilted his head. "Then why do all civilizations, regardless of time and place, share fundamental moral values? If morality were simply a survival mechanism, why do people sacrifice their lives for strangers? Why do we admire selflessness when evolution should favor selfishness?" Dr. Carter hesitated for a moment. "Morality is subjective. It changes with culture. But certain values, like love, kindness, and justice, are universal," Barron pointed out. "Where do those come from?" Dr. Carter cleared his throat. "All right, let's change the subject. If God exists, why is there suffering in the world? Why do bad things happen to good people?" Barron smiled slightly. "Professor, do you go to the gym?" Dr. Carter blinked, caught off guard. "What? The gym," Barron repeated. "Do you lift weights?" Dr. Carter scoffed. "Well, yes. And does lifting weights hurt?" Dr. Carter frowned. "Yes, but that pain makes you stronger." Barron nodded. "Exactly. Suffering isn't proof of God's absence. It's part of our growth. Just like lifting weights strengthens our muscles, challenges strengthen our character." The class was completely silent now. Dr. Carter rubbed his chin. All right, but science has explained so much. We don't need God to understand the universe. Barron took a deep breath. Professor, do you believe in love? Dr. Carter looked puzzled. Of course. Can you see love? Can you measure it in a lab? Can you hold it in your hands? Dr. Carter sighed. No, but we can observe its effects. Barron nodded. Exactly. We can't see love, but we know it's real because we see what it does. The same applies to God. We see his effects, people transformed, lives changed, hope where there was once none. Dr. Carter exhaled, glancing at the students. Some were nodding, others whispering. For the first time, he wasn't in complete control of the conversation. A student in the back suddenly spoke up. Professor, what if faith isn't about proof, but about trust? Like trusting a parachute before you jump? Another student chimed in. Yeah, and what about miracles? There are things even science can't explain. Dr. Carter sighed. He had spent years debating religion, shutting down believers with cold logic. But today was different. For the first time, he felt something strange. Doubt. He looked back at Barron, who stood tall and unshaken. Finally, after a long pause, Dr. Carter chuckled softly. I've been doing this debate for years, and I've never lost. But you've given me something to think about. Barron smiled. That's all I wanted, Professor. Just for you to think. Dr. Carter nodded slowly. Fair enough, Barron. Fair enough. As class ended, students whispered about what had just happened. Some walked up to Barron to shake his hand. Others left in deep thought. And as Dr. Carter packed up his things, he looked back at Barron Trump, the student who had done something no one else had ever done. He had made the professor question his own beliefs. Maybe, just maybe, faith wasn't as foolish as he once thought.